Welcome. Shalom, shalom. So is this, how's it working with the PowerPoint? We good on PowerPoint? Awesome. Okay. So we have people from, 40, 50 nations here, but many people, at least the ones sitting in this room, and probably many of those sitting at home, even though we're sitting in Jerusalem right now, there are many of you, I bet, who are in this room right now, even though we're sitting in the Waldorf Astoria here in Jerusalem, that have never actually been to Jerusalem before. Now, what do I mean by that? The Jerusalem of King David, of King Solomon, of the prophets like Isaiah and Jeremiah, they were not hanging out at the Waldorf Astoria. They were not hanging out at the King David Hotel. In fact, King David never walked through the old city of Jerusalem. King David never put a note between the stones of the Western Wall. The original biblical city of Jerusalem is not found at the Waldorf, and it's not found inside the walls of the old city. It's actually found somewhere else, which we're going to talk about in a moment. But we're here at the Jerusalem Prayer Breakfast. We're praying for the peace of Jerusalem. And yet, according to many in the world, we're actually wasting our time. Why? Because no one in this room actually has a connection to Jerusalem. So if you take a look over here, the United Nations, consistently, including this past week, when Palestinian Authority Chairman Mahmoud Abbas gave a speech at the United Nations saying that Jews and Christians have no biblical heritage in Jerusalem. You see that it just is going on pretty much all the time. No one in this room has a connection to Jerusalem. Now, what's interesting about that is that if you go back not that long ago, historically speaking, to 1930, there's a body called the Supreme Muslim Council. And the Supreme Muslim Council puts out a booklet about the significance of a place called the Al-Haram Al-Sharif, referring to the Temple Mount, the biblical Mount Moriah. Now, what does the Supreme Muslim Council in 1930 want people to know about the Temple Mount, and why is it being put out in English? So the answer to the second question is, who is in the country in 1930? Help me out. Who's here in 1930? The British are here. So this is a guidebook for British personnel stationed in the country. And what should they know about in 1930 about the Temple Mount? Well, it goes on to say, its identity with the site of Solomon's temple is beyond dispute. This too is the spot, according to universal belief, on which, quote, David built an altar unto the Lord and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings. So according to the Supreme Muslim Council, right? How often does the Supreme Muslim Council get some applause, right? Supreme Muslim Council, they say that there's a David, there's a Solomon, there's a temple, beyond dispute, universal belief, and they quote the Bible. Now, 1930, it's about 100 years ago. So since then, there's been some updates to the booklet. So now we have this one, Al-Aqsa Mosque, Clarifications for Misconceptions. Now, what are the misconceptions? The misconceptions are that you might actually think that Jews and Christians actually have a connection to Jerusalem, that David and Solomon were there once upon a time. So they clarify that very quickly. Dome of the Rock, and not the Holy of Holies. The Al-Burak Wall, and not the Wailing Wall. The Al-Aqsa Mosque, and not the temple. What was less than a century ago, beyond dispute, is today being systematically erased. No one, according to all this, no one here is connected to Jerusalem in any meaningful way. So the question is, are we? And is there a place where not simply as a matter of faith, but as a matter of fact, we can see that Jerusalem's biblical heritage is true, that the connection that Jews and Christians have to Jerusalem dating back thousands of years can be affirmed? And the answer is, it can. And that place, like I said, is not here in the Waldorf, and it's not in the old city of Jerusalem. Up until 1867, everyone thought the original biblical city of Jerusalem was the old city. Until 1867, Queen Victoria of England, she wants to discover the treasures of the Bible, like the Ark of the Covenant. Now, if you want to find the treasures of the Bible, where are you going to go? What place? You're gonna go to the Holy Land. If you're gonna search one city in the Holy Land to find the treasures, where will you go? Help me out. Jerusalem. If you're gonna search one place in all of Jerusalem to find the treasures of the Bible, where will you search? Temple Mount. And that's what Charles Warren wants to do. 1867, Charles Warren wants to go to the Temple Mount, except there's a problem, which is the Ottomans, the Muslims are there. And they say, Charles, we're sure you're a great guy, but you're not going to dig up the Temple Mount, the biblical Mount Moriah. And so now Charles Warren has a problem. He cannot go back to the Queen empty-handed. So he says, if I can't excavate on the Temple Mount, I will do the next best thing, which is to excavate near it, right? We don't do under, but near it. So he comes down the slopes of the Temple Mount, and he walks through the Kidron Valley, and as he's walking through the Kidron Valley, he comes across this spring. This is the Gihon Spring, mentioned in the Bible, in the book of Genesis. This spring has been flowing from today, going back thousands and thousands of years. And he sees it's flowing through an ancient man-made tunnel. Now, he doesn't realize it, but he begins to walk through a tunnel engineered by the biblical King Hezekiah, direct descendant of King David. And he doesn't know any of that. He just walks through this tunnel. He says, wow, old tunnel, man-made, water flowing through it, really cool, where does it go? He walks through this tunnel, he's carrying a torch. The flame of his torch begins to flicker wildly. He looks above his head, he sees there's a shaft going up into the mountain. And he's curious, where does this shaft lead? He climbs up the shaft and he finds himself inside a network of underground tunnels and fortifications with antiquities, fancy word for old stuff, dating back thousands of years. And he comes up with a theory. He says, everyone believes that the original biblical city of Jerusalem, the city of David, the place where Jerusalem began, everyone believes it can be found inside the walls of the old city. Charles Warren says, I believe everyone's wrong. I believe that the original biblical city of Jerusalem, the city of David, the place where Jerusalem began, is not found inside the walls of the old city, but found outside the walls of the old city. Except there's a problem. When he announces this theory to the world, scholar and layman alike say, Charles, that is the most ridiculous thing we've ever heard. Why? Because if this is the city of David today, this 11-acre ridge just south of the Temple Mount, right next to the Western Wall, if that is the city of David today, here's what it looked like more than 100 years ago. And they say, Charles, you're telling us that this barren 11-acre ridge, this is the Jerusalem with significance, not to millions of people, but to billions of people. There is nothing there. It has to be the old city. Charles Warren says, I'm telling you, this is the spot. And over the next 150 years, the city of David, the place where Jerusalem began, will become one of the most archaeologically excavated sites in the world. The most excavated site in all of Israel. And today everyone knows that Charles Warren was in fact correct. That the original biblical city of Jerusalem is not found inside the walls of the old city, but found outside the walls of the old city. Now, this is not a place that once upon a time we were digging there. We have 5 active excavations going on as we speak, and I want to share with you 2 discoveries in particular that are showing that when you're in the place where the Bible happened, the words of the Bible come to life. And the first part of it goes back to 2004. Now, 2004, at the very southern end of the city of David, there is a road. And beneath the road, there is a sewage pipe. And in 2004, that sewage pipe explodes. And now there's a big mess. So the municipality of Jerusalem has to send in construction crews to repair the sewage pipe. However, Jerusalem is not just another municipality, and the city of David, the place where Jerusalem began, is not just another part of Jerusalem. And here, you don't only send in construction crews to repair a sewage pipe, who else do you have to send in? Archaeologists. And so here you can see you have the bulldozers and dump trucks doing the work. The archaeologists are supervising, and they begin to hear scraping and scratching. It doesn't sound right. So what do they do next? They clear everyone out. And it turns out that in repairing the sewage pipe, they had made an incredible inadvertent discovery, which is these stone steps, 2,000 years old. Now, the archaeologists said that these stone steps are identical to one other set of steps that we find in Jerusalem, and those are the steps over there. Anyone recognize those steps? Those are the southern steps, right? The southern steps. And so what were the southern steps? So the southern steps were the steps that 2,000 years ago would have gone up as the main entryway up into the temple, going back 2,000 years ago to the time of Jesus. So then the question the archaeologists had was, okay, we know what the upper set of stairs are. What are the lower set of steps that were discovered because of the busted sewage pipe? And they realized that they had found the steps leading down to the ancient pool of Siloam. Now, what is the pool of Siloam? Pool of Siloam, for our Christian friends here, has deep significance in the Christian scriptures. Now, the Bible tells us there's 3 times during the year that everyone has to go on pilgrimage up to the temple. What are they? Passover, Shavuot, Pentecost, Festival of Weeks, and Sukkot, Tabernacles, right? Those are the 3 pilgrimage festivals. Now, what do you have to do? There you go, right? What do you have to do before you can go up on pilgrimage to the temple? You have to immerse, you have to cleanse, you have to go to a ritual bath. Now, here's a question. How many people, say Passover 2,000 years ago, how many people do you think are going on pilgrimage up to the temple on the Temple Mount? Just throw out a number. Give me a number. 1 million. Okay, 1 million. Do we think 1 million is a high number or a low number? Low. Okay, so someone give me a higher number. 3 million. Do we think 3 million is high or low? Low. How high are we going? 6 million, that's an awkward number here. But anyway, so only Jews can make that joke. Okay, so the historian Josephus said that 2,000 years ago on Passover, you would have had 2.7 million people. 3 million was not bad, except if you're on The Price is Right, then you would lose. But that does a good guess, right? 2.7 million people who were going on pilgrimage up to the temple. The pool of Siloam was the size of 2 Olympic-sized swimming pools, about 1.5 acres in size, which we are excavating as we speak. So now the question that the archaeologists had was, if we know where the pool of Siloam was, this is what it could have looked like 2,000 years ago. If we know where the pool of Siloam is in the city of David, the place where Jerusalem began, at the southern end of the city of David, the question is, how did the millions of pilgrims get from the pool all the way up to the temple? So the archaeologists widen the excavation, and they find what has been called the most significant archaeological discovery anywhere in the world of the last 100 years. What do they find? They find the pilgrimage road. This is the road that our ancestors, yours and mine, Jews and Christians, 2,000 years ago, this is the road that our ancestors would have walked on when they went on pilgrimage up to the temple on the Temple Mount. Not a road near this one, not stones that look like these. This road, these actual stones. I call this the biblical superhighway. Anywhere you wanted to go in Jerusalem 2,000 years ago, this is the road that's taking you there. Now, 2,000 years ago, this road is under the sky, right? Only today it's underground, because over the last 2,000 years, Jerusalem has been conquered many, many times. Throw some earthquakes into it, and you end up with what you end up with, it being buried beneath a neighborhood. Now, the road itself is about 5 times wider than what you see in this picture. What the archaeologists are doing right now is a north-south excavation connecting the full length of the road from the Pool of Siloam all the way up to the footsteps of the western wall, the southern steps. And once we finish that, the archaeologists are going to go east-west and uncover the full length of the road. Archaeologists are already uncovering along the road shops and stalls. So if you're on the way up and you need to get something for a temple offering, maybe you need a silver half-shekel coin to pay the temple tax. Maybe you need a hat, a water bottle, a souvenir, a tchotchke for someone who's still at home. This is where you're going to find it on the pilgrimage road. Now, something interesting happens here. You see this podium, right? This is a 2,000-year-old podium. It's the only one of its kind found so far in Jerusalem. It's found in the city of David. It's found along the pilgrimage road. Now, if we go back 2,000 years, I've been asked by many, many people, many dignitaries and ambassadors and members of Congress and so on. They say, what are the chances that Jesus walked on this road? Maybe stood on this podium, but Jesus walked on this road. What are the chances? So I say to them, 100%. They say, well, how do you know? And I said, the answer is very simple. If you believe that there was a historic person named Jesus 2,000 years ago, he was Jewish. He went with all the Jews to cleanse in the pool of Siloam before ascending up through the city of David, along the pilgrimage road, going up to the temple on the Temple Mount. The pool of Siloam that we are excavating as we speak in the city of David is the same pool of Siloam from 2,000 years ago. The pilgrimage road that we are excavating as we speak is the same pilgrimage road from 2,000 years ago. The Temple Mount is the same Temple Mount. Not simply a matter of faith, but a matter of fact. You could walk on it with your own feet. You could touch it with your own hands. You could see it with your own eyes. It is all coming back to life. Now, if you think of some of the great wonders of the world, you might think of the pyramids. Anyone here in this room visit the pyramids before? Right? A couple of you? Anyone been to the Colosseum in Rome? Okay, some more. Imagine a person goes to the pyramids and they say, look at the grandeur of the pharaohs. You go to the Colosseum, you say, look at the might of the great Roman Empire. But then you say, where are the pharaohs today? Where is the great Roman Empire today? And the answer is the same. Museums, history books, with some monuments left behind. But then you come to the city of David, the place where Jerusalem began. You visit the pool of Siloam, you walk along the pilgrimage road in a few years' time. This, I believe, one day will be in the same category of the great wonders of the world, but actually in a category all its own. Why? Because the pyramids, the Colosseum, they're a chapter of history. Once upon a time. This is something else. This is a continuation of a story. Why? Because the people who walked on that road 2,000 years ago, it's their descendants who will walk on it in a few years' time, who worship the same God, who maybe even speak the same language, have the same customs, traditions, festivals as their ancestors did thousands of years ago. Where else in the world do you have that? You have it here in Jerusalem, in the city of David, the place where Jerusalem began. Now, before I do a little show and tell with you, I want to share with you a story. We had a few representatives of the EU officials. They came on an off-the-record visit to the city of David. And they asked me, we're standing on the pilgrimage road, and they said, well, what do the Palestinians think of all this? And I said, well, their leadership, they hate this place. They said, well, why? And I said, well, it's very simple. The story that their leadership has been telling for nearly a century is that we are a colonial project. We're a bunch of occupiers, colonizers, thieves. We have no connection to this land in general and to Jerusalem in particular. Now, what's the problem with that story? The city of David, right? There is no place in the world that shows more clearly, not simply as a matter of faith, but as a matter of fact, that the Jewish people, and by extension Christians, have been here for thousands of years. It's what you could call an inconvenient truth. And so I said to them, I said, but you know what? I said, if you want to separate the archaeology from the politics, I said, I'm all in favor. I have a foolproof, guaranteed way how to do that. So they said, okay, tell us, we're very interested. I said, all that needs to happen is that the EU officials, EU leadership, UN leadership, Palestinian leadership have to do one thing only. You can still call for your peace plans and call for division of this and giving away that. Just acknowledge one small thing, that the Jewish people have been in Jerusalem for thousands of years, that the archaeology shows it beyond any shadow of a doubt. Now, what was their response? They said the Palestinian leadership will never agree to that. I said, well, what do you want from us? We are uncovering the history, we're uncovering the heritage. This is the example of the emperor is naked, right? In a few years' time, and I get excited when I think about it. Yes, there are gonna be lots of Jews who are gonna walk on the pilgrimage road, but I get excited about it because there's about 2.3 billion Christians in the world. How many places can you say with absolute certainty that you're walking in the footsteps of someone very important to you? This is it, right? Which means if you take 10% of Christians, say about, 200 something million, they're coming to the city of David. They're coming to Jerusalem to walk up from the pool of Siloam, up this pilgrimage road. It's going to change Jerusalem forever. So now let me show you a few things that we found on the road. I need very quickly here, my Price is Right friend. Come quickly, you're gonna help me. Come on down, you're the next contestant at Jerusalem Prayer Breakfast.
What do I win?
Okay. In the Pilgrimage Road excavation, nice, come on up, right? In the Pilgrimage Road excavation, we find, as we're removing the earth, a lot of stuff that looks like this. You're gonna get a little bit dirty. You ready? Now hold your hand up for everybody. What do you think's in your hand? What is that? Ash. Give me, that's all right. Give me a year. Where's that, when's that at? It's not poo, it's ash, right? What year do you think that's from?
18.
No, we're going back like a long time ago. 70, right? That is from, say, you're gonna help me with other things, so stay here. That is from 70, right? What happens in 70? The Romans destroyed Jerusalem. That is ash from the Roman fires that destroyed Jerusalem. Now, very quick story about this ash before you're gonna help me with the next thing. I was with a group of young Jewish leaders, and I did what I just did here, and there was a young woman like you, and she's like, oh my God, that's so incredible. But in the group, there was also a rabbi, and the rabbi looks at this young woman and says, what is wrong with you? You should not be smiling, you should be crying. That's the destruction of Jerusalem. That is mourning, depression. Don't smile. I was like, all right, a little bit heavy-handed, but okay. And I thought, all right, how do I salvage this moment? And I said, it reminds me of a story that happened a few decades after the Romans destroyed Jerusalem in the year 70. The Talmud tells a story of 3 sages who are making their way to Jerusalem. They get to Mount Scopus, and from Mount Scopus, they see the temple in ruins. And 2 of the sages begin to cry, and 1 begins to laugh. The one who begins to laugh, the 2 other sages look at him horrified. They say, WTH, how could you be laughing? And he turns to them, he says, I don't understand, how could you be crying? How can we be crying? Here's the temple ruined before our eyes. Foxes running through where the Holy of Holies used to be. How could you be laughing? He says, that's why I'm laughing. So we don't understand. And the sage, his name was Akiva, Rabbi Akiva. He says to them, until I saw with my own eyes that the prophecies of destruction had come true, I never knew for certain if the prophecies of redemption would come true. But now that I've seen the destruction, I know that the redemption will come one day. And the sages said to him, Akiva, you have comforted us. Akiva, you have comforted us. Now, in that spirit, the Romans, in the year 71, you're gonna model this for me, ready?
Yes.
The Romans, in the year 71, they mint this coin. You're gonna hold this up, right? You could show different sides, be like Vanna, right? Okay, but I need a little bit of the screen also, like a double kind of thing going on here. There we go. So if you look at the bottom, that side, but the picture's blocking, you can see a coin, it's fine, right? You can see it says, on one side is the Roman Emperor Vespasian, on the other side of the coin, it has the Roman legionnaire towering above a Jewish woman on her knees crying. On the coin it says Judea Capta. Judea has been captured or defeated. The name of the country was Judea, its capital Jerusalem. Jews are called Jews because Jews come from Judea. Good? That was the most widely minted victory coin the Romans ever minted. If you've been to Rome, you've seen the Arch of Titus. Titus would go on to become Emperor of Rome. But before he's Emperor of Rome, he's the commander of the 10th Roman Legion, which destroys Jerusalem. Again, you can see how proud the Romans are over their victory over Jerusalem. And now, if we fast forward to 1958, Israel does something very strange. You ready? We could put that one down. And we're gonna end with this. Israel does something very strange. They mint this medallion. Now, I don't know if you guys could zoom in on this medallion here, if it's possible. No, hold on, that side. Right, no, other side. That side, good, right? Take a look at that, you're good at this. Maybe the next person wants you on the stage also. So if you look, it's very strange because 1958, Israel's 10th anniversary, you can see they remint the Roman victory coin, which is strange. Why would you remint a symbol of shame for your people? But when you now flip it over, you could see the answer. It now has the woman standing tall. The Roman legionnaire is gone. On the coin, it says, Israel liberata. Israel has been liberated. And a man on his knees working the land, making the desert bloom, the woman holding a newborn child in her arms. This was Israel's response to Rome, 2,000 years in the making. And as we could see by the fact that we're gathering here in Jerusalem, as we uncover more and more of our shared biblical heritage in the city of David, that the best days are truly yet to come. Next year in Jerusalem. Thank you so much.